Let's talk a little bit about protein digestion. The body does not directly use proteins from diet to make the protein it needs. Dietary proteins first have to be digested and broken down into the individual amino acids so they can be absorbed and transported to the cells. So let's talk about how they get digested. The first step in protein breakdown can be the cooking process. Remember when the coiled protein becomes uncoiled, we call that denaturation? Well, that can occur when exposed to heat. An egg, for example, will actually change shapes and change characteristics as you crack it open into the pan and start exposing it to heat. Well, that's the first process in protein breakdown. Next up, you're going to put the protein in your mouth. There's not much chemical or enzymatic action that takes place in the mouth, but there is mechanical digestion. The teeth and the tongue are going to break down the food into smaller components. In the stomach, the protein is going to be exposed to hydrochloric acid. Hydrochloric acid is going to denature the protein, meaning it's going to take its coiled shape and lengthening it out. That allows it to be exposed to different enzymes. Gastrin is the hormone that will stimulate the release of pepsinogen from the chief cells in the stomach. Pepsinogen, when exposed to hydrochloric acid, will then be converted to pepsin. Pepsin will start breaking down the bonds between the individual amino acids. Then, the protein, what's left of it, will be moved into the small intestine, will be exposed to two different enzymes. Proteases are enzymes that will cleave the proteins into peptides and amino acids, and peptidase will be secreting the intestinal lining to then break down the peptides. The peptides will eventually be broken down so much that you'll be left with nothing but amino acids, the smallest possible component. The amino acid can then be absorbed across the intestinal lining and into the bloodstream. The individual amino acids get absorbed through the intestinal lining through facilitated diffusion and active transport. There's individual specific transporter protein for each individual amino acid. With that in mind, when you think about the supplements you take, single amino acid supplements can be a good idea if you need that specific amino acids in large quantity, but can actually be quite detrimental if you don't need that specific amino acid in larger quantities than others, because each amino acid has to be absorbed through a specific channel. So if you were to bombard the intestinal lining with just one type of supplement, there wouldn't be enough specific channel for that supplement that it would start taking over other amino acid channels. So let's say you take a lot of alanine. Well, then it will saturate all of the transporter proteins, and the other amino acids coming in from natural food ingestion won't have anywhere to be absorbed. So you're limiting amino acid absorption by taking single amino acid supplements. It's best to get our amino acids through food sources. And that's basically it for protein digestion. Basically, you get denaturation from cooking, and then you'll get denaturation from coming into contact with stomach acid, and then the protein will be broken down into eventually amino acid in the small intestine, be absorbed through the bloodstream, and then be transported to the liver. If you consume too much amino acids, it'll basically just be excreted. So let's say you have a certain pool of amino acids in the blood, and it's perfect for the fabrication of body tissue, hormones, enzyme, and antibodies. Now, if you were to consume an excess amount, basically they'll be broken down. The carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen will then be used to be recreated into carbohydrates and fats. Carbohydrates and fats would be used for energy, but if there's already enough energy supplies, it will then be stored for later use, either as glycogen or as fat in adipose tissue. The nitrogen will have to travel to the kidneys to then be excreted through the urea, so your urine. So consuming too much protein doesn't do you any good. Your body can only use a certain amount before it has to start excreting it or storing it as fat.